Tony, photographers are being robbed.
Say it's not so.
We're sitting ducks. And the rate of camera theft is going up over the years.
Really?
Yeah. And I think I know why that is. I think I know how we can prevent cameras from being stolen and how you can protect yourself. Because we've had our cameras stolen.
Yeah, we're going to tell that story as well as some of my favorite things, which are heists. Like Ocean's 11 style stuff.
You like heists, yeah, you do.
But first, a word from our sponsor, Squarespace. You'll need some kind of website. You need to improve your web presence. Simply having a Facebook or Instagram page isn't enough. Squarespace makes incredibly gorgeous and functional sites really easy to set up. Just head to squarespace.com/Tony, get yourself a 14-day free trial, drag your pictures in, make your website look amazing, and if you love it after 14 days, use the coupon code Tony and you can get 10% off. Thanks, Squarespace. First up, can I tell the story of our Samsung NX1 getting stolen?
Yeah, it's infuriating.
We used to sell all of our used gear direct, and we have a lot of gear because we buy it for reviews and then we resell it, and we listed it on our site and somebody buys it. And it was like a $1,600 item even used. And I investigated it really closely. Like we look up the person's address on Google Maps, we verify the billing and shipping address and all of this stuff, totally legit. Send it off. A few days later, the credit card comes back, rejected. It's because it was a stolen credit card. And we go to contact the buyer, and the person who received it, it's a scam where they receive the package and then they ship it off, in this case, to Russia. They had filled out one of those work from home for 30 days ads in the back of the paper. And their job for working from home was to receive packages and then forward them to a different destination. And this got it out of the country. This hid the final destination from us, the seller. And even with my background in security, I really had no way to know that this was going to be stolen.
Actually, they not only hid the final destination from us, but from the person forwarding it, because then they shipped it from their home to a shipping center.
Right.
And then it went from there to another shipping center in Russia, is the only thing we know.
The only reason we know it was in Russia is I looked up that person's email address who bought it, and they had previously purchased one of our books, The Photography Buying Guide. Perhaps because it has detailed information about camera gear and what used gear is worth.
Yeah, absolutely. He was doing his research.
And, you know, we tried to contact the authorities in Russia, and they don't care.
I also contacted
there's
him.
no using the police on any of this. You lost your gear, you're out of luck. There's no reconciliation.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that we could have done differently is perhaps requiring a phone call where you have to talk to the person directly and ask them, why do you want the camera? Why are you buying it? Are you shipping it to anyone else? Who wants to go through that? This video is not sponsored by KEH, but that's why we started selling our gear to KEH, because that risk has now gone away.
Yeah, and maybe we could get a few more bucks selling it direct, except every now and then something is completely stolen and you lose $1,600 worth of gear.
That was the second item we had stolen, actually.
Yeah, I know. We were super aware of everything and we did our best and we could not get past it.
So then we went on a trip to Barcelona, and my friend Ira, who's a National Geographic photographer, said, hey, I do tours there, and several people on my tour had their camera stuff stolen, so do not let your camera out of your sight. Don't leave it on the back of your chair at a restaurant. Don't leave it on your table. Don't put your bag down even for a moment. And so the entire time I'm in Barcelona, I'm like, do not take two hands off of my camera. I'm just clutching it.
I borrowed like a GFX 50R from Fuji, a medium format camera meant for street photography and stuff. And it's like $6,000 with the lens. And I was so nervous about losing this borrowed camera that I just decided I'm just gonna shoot with my smartphone. And this is such a common thing that people are afraid of having expensive gear stolen, so they revert back to the smartphone. It's just one more reason to use your stupid smartphone instead of a real camera. And that's why later we're gonna tell you how camera manufacturers can fix this and make it really difficult for people to steal your camera.
Yeah, there is a way to fix it, and there is a way to deter theft, and that's something that needs to be done. And in Barcelona, in fact, once I looked up online how these thefts are done, they coordinate. People coordinate. They'll have a couple people waiting to steal your stuff. They'll have someone come out and distract you and ask you questions. And so it's not like, you know, you have to have your guard up at all times, because these people, they're doing it intelligently.
Yeah, it's organized.
It's
crime.
organized,
And
yeah.
as a layman, it can be almost impossible to combat it. But let's get into the heists now. We're going to
like
start
the
out with
heist
some
stuff.
simple heists
Let's start with
and go increasingly complex.
I will call these like not the smartest criminals, and I think the least intimidating. The camera store up in Calgary, where our friends Chris and Jordan used to work, and Evelyn and Dave work now. They had a guy come into the store, Tony, and they said right away when he walked in, like they knew like something was up, but he asked to see a Sony A7R3, and it had the 16-35 lens, and he just booked. He just ran with it.
That's real simple.
It's $5,000 worth of stuff. So they chased him, some of the salespeople. They're not supposed to do that. They're not required to do that, but they did, and the guy sprayed them with bear spray. So they were committed. And then a few years previous to that, they had people do a smash and grab where they smashed the window. They stole like $27,000 worth of stuff. I think one of them was a rare Leica that they ended up recovering. But camera stores are vulnerable. This happens all of the time. There's Hunt's Photo in New Hampshire, and they had $50,000 in cameras stolen, very similar to the previous camera store break-in where it was like they just waited till after hours, smashed out the windows, stuffed their bags, and took off.
$50,000.
Yeah.
Just stolen. And then they can just easily take it to a pawn shop and sell it.
Yeah. But
Because there's no tracking for it.
I mean, they have the serial numbers and stuff, and they tell people, hey, this stuff was stolen. These are the serial numbers. If you're buying gear, could you please look out for it? And sometimes things are recovered, but that's not extremely effective.
I buy used gear all the time. You know how many times I've looked up a serial number to see if it was stolen? 0. Never looked it up.
Well, I mean, you know, camera rental places have tried to prevent this. They made this database where you could put in all of your serial numbers, and then they would kind of track serial numbers, but like, that's not that sophisticated, right? And you have to be like preventative about it, which people don't usually think about this type of thing unless it happened to them. Like with our shipping scams,
Right.
We realized, all right, it's really hard to avoid these shipping scams, so let's just like sell through KEH or whatever.
And security has to be on by default.
Yeah.
You can't have some system where people need to go out of their way and put in a bunch of energy to make something secure.
Yeah.
That's why that's never going to work.
But then the serial number thing, like when we're shooting in Barcelona, I'm not going to be like, take my camera, I have a serial number. Maybe there's a 1 in 1,000 shot, I'll get it back. I was just like hugging it. Like, I don't want to lose my pictures. I don't want to lose my camera. I don't want my trip to be ruined. It's not good enough. Then
Tell us about Ford's.
Ford's is, where is that? In Scotland. And this was more sophisticated, more your style.
Oh, yeah.
There was like $200,000 worth of Leica stuff stolen, Tony. And when the police investigated, they thought that the criminals had cased the store previously by coming in and shopping and scoping out the situation. And they also suspect that they triggered the alarm about a month prior just to get a feel for how long it took for the police to get there and people to respond. They stole $200,000 worth of cameras in 15 minutes. They were in and out.
Do they know if they had cool nicknames like Dr. Red?
I don't know that.
I love those caper movies.
I know, you're really into it. I don't have that information. Do
I
you
love
want me
that
to?
they tested the response time. They probably started a stopwatch,
They're
you
like,
know?
"Go."
We got 15 minutes until the coppers are here.
I feel like they think they're cool, but they're just not. They're just not.
I'm not rooting for the bad guy.
No, you're
I
just
think it's
interested.
pretty cool.
Yeah. And then Lens Rentals is another one. This is what kind of triggered my interest in this subject. Just the other day, like October 11th, October 12th. I actually don't know what day it is, to be honest with you, Tony.
The 13th.
Okay, so a couple days ago, Lens Rentals had a break-in, and it was with a stolen truck. So these people stole a truck from a car rental place. They went to Lens Rentals in Tennessee, and they broke in and they stole a bunch of stuff. So they're currently looking for them. Prior to that, before Lens Rentals and Lens Pro To Go had merged, in 2015, there was a theft at Lens Pro To Go, Tony, where they actually broke through the walls.
I saw that because they actually built in like a really sophisticated safe door that wouldn't be easily bypassed. And so the thieves like knew this, but they, inspected the wall itself and determined that was easier to break through than the door.
They stole like $580,000 worth of stuff.
No, that's like a major heist.
That's a major heist. I don't know if how much they got back, if they got any of it back, but that's a really big deal. So what we're saying is these professional agencies are having a hard time deterring the theft. Individuals are having a hard time. I mean, there's stories, you see them, wedding photographers have their camera gear stolen out of a church. That was a story I've seen. People have their cameras cut off of them. People have their lenses removed from their cameras gently so they don't even notice. Camera stuff is getting stolen all of the time. Why is that, Tony?
We'll talk about that in just 1 second, as well as easy ways for manufacturers to give you a free software update that could make this just about impossible, or at least drastically reduce theft. But first, a word from our sponsor, Squarespace.
Yeah, whether you want your own website, portfolio, or store, you can make it happen with Squarespace. I highly recommend you go in and make the free trial. It's for 14 days. You don't have to put in a credit card first. You just try it out. Once you're in there, you can also make free logos and watermarks and things. It's really cool. I've done that recently. And it's simple to do. I usually just make a folder of my favorite photos and then just drag and drop them into my Squarespace portfolio, and it's fun. You can rearrange things, you can make new categories, and it's a great way to show that you're professional, and it makes your photos look great. So try that 14-day free trial. The link is in the description below. Just go to squarespace.com/Tony and use the coupon code TONY.
Thank you, Squarespace. Okay, so why is it cameras are getting stolen? Why is it not cars or smartphones? Like the first car I bought myself was like 1994. I bought myself a 1984 Honda Prelude, and it was old, but I loved it. And I had to put the club on it. Remember that red club that you'd lock onto the steering wheel?
I remember the commercials, yeah.
Because that was how you prevented your car from getting stolen. But nobody has a club in their car now, because cars now have all these security features in them, and they've basically taken it out of car thieves. Like sometimes cars will get stolen and some things can be parted out, but the risk versus reward isn't there anymore. If you steal a car, it's possible that it has a GPS tracker in it. It's likely the person is going to be arrested, and thus it's not worth the money they could get for spare parts. The cars that are stolen tend to be old cars nowadays.
In our area, we've had a huge outbreak in stolen cars, and they're usually unlocked in people's driveways with the keys in them.
Yeah, and they're probably also older models.
Yeah.
New cars are pretty rarely stolen. They've like fixed the theft problem.
Yeah.
Same thing with smartphones. When smartphones are new, they were getting stolen all the time. Now they've implemented a variety of safety measures, including, locking pins so you can't just go and use the phone unless you know the pin. They have GPS and cellular connections where they'll report their location. If it is stolen, it can be completely wiped and it is just bricked. So now you could steal a phone and you could break it down and sell it for parts, but that reduces the amount of money the thieves get. It introduces a whole bunch of labor, and generally it makes the whole process of burglary less profitable. And that's what this is about, because anybody can steal anything. You could get a tow truck and go steal any Lamborghini that you see in the street, but you wouldn't get away with it for long, and thus people don't do that. Another example, everybody used to have these little Garmin GPS units in their car before nav units were common.
Yeah.
And that just resulted in a massive amount of break-ins. Garmin released a firmware update for all these units that required a mandatory PIN. And it ended it. One firmware update just ended all these GPS thefts, because suddenly requiring this PIN meant that unit was completely useless to a thief, and no more smashed windows.
Yeah.
It was that easy to fix it. We could do this for cameras, and it would be so simple to require a PIN before you could use your camera.
Yeah, I thought about the practicality of that. Like, if I'm out taking pictures, I don't want to have to put in a pin every single time. But with cameras, they could do it with a timer. So you put in your pin, and maybe then you select the amount of time you want your camera to stay unlocked. So if I'm doing a portrait session, I could just set it for an hour, knowing that I'm going to have it on me for an hour, and then I have to re-enter the pin another time.
And for people complaining about pins, everybody unlocks their smartphone about 800 times per day.
Yeah.
This is not an uncommon inconvenience. It is a little bit inconvenient. I would propose that it is on by default, but that you would have the option to remove the security. I appreciate that. So I want to make it clear, we're not forcing anything on you. You'd be able to turn it off in our scenario. You'd be able to punch in a pin, or like an old Mortal Kombat shortcut. Remember how you had cheats?
ABACABB?
Yeah, you could do that with the shutter and the AF on button and the depth of field preview button, and your muscle memory would immediately figure out that you needed to push these 5 buttons in sequence.
You could be like shutter, function, shutter, and then it would unlock your camera?
Yeah, by the time you got the camera to your eye, it would always be unlocked. And it would stay unlocked for the period of time that you selected. There were other ways that you couldn't necessarily do with a firmware update, though you could do some of them. For example, proximity. My Apple Watch unlocks my MacBook when I'm near it. That's very convenient.
What, really?
Yeah, you haven't turned that on, I guess?
Oh, what?
It's very convenient. These cameras have Bluetooth, they have Wi-Fi. So they could detect that your phone's Bluetooth is near, or your watch, or that you're at your home's Wi-Fi access point, or the church venue that you're at, it can see its Wi-Fi. You could choose to say, anytime I'm near that Wi-Fi, go ahead and function. If a thief steals it, they're probably not going to stay near your watch or near your house. Thus, they're not going to be able to use it. Thus, they're not going to be able to resell it to somebody. Thus, it's not profitable for them, and they aren't likely to steal again.
It just makes it less profitable and more difficult. Imagine a thief steals your camera, it has a PIN code, and they realize, I don't know the PIN, I can't unlock the camera, and now the camera is useless to resell.
Your camera is still stolen. This is the part people get hung up on.
Yeah.
Yes, your camera is stolen, but they're not going to steal the next camera.
Yeah.
And overall theft goes down.
Or I thought if one manufacturer implemented this and another didn't, they might learn, okay, well, like older cameras or like Leicas, you can still steal them, but X company has this technology, so they're not worth stealing.
Yeah, why doesn't Sony or Canon or Nikon be the first to get this? And then their cameras will be so much less attractive for theft, and that's going to be a huge selling point. It could also lower your camera insurance rates, because they're going to be less likely to be stolen unless you won't be paying as much every month. Like, it's something that will pay for itself.
I would get one of those little signs for my camera, like you put outside your house, the little yellow sign.
Monitored by integrated security systems.
Yeah, like anti-theft technology camera.
I also think you could use location. If they had actual GPSs built into them, you could draw a virtual barrier around the places that you tend to shoot, and that way a thief, if they left the area, they would be blocked out. Fingerprinting, of course. Our fingers always land right on the shutter button. Fingerprint sensors are extremely fast and accurate. So many very inexpensive smartphones have them built in, and they work automatically and instantly. Maybe it would increase the cost by like $20.
That would be a cool one because you would never even think about it. You'd just be using your camera and automatically unlocking it.
Yeah, but that does require a hardware update. So you couldn't do it with a firmware update, but there's other things you could do with firmware alone to all the existing cameras. And then I also think, you're holding your face up against it often, or at least it has a view of your face. Of course, they could integrate a small rear-facing camera like the tiny little camera in your phone to do face recognition. And
you could read your eyeball like in your caper movies.
yes, I wanted to actually like have a laser beam sliding across.
Oh, yours sounds like the Roadrunner. Mine was more like, ooh, and yours was like, meep, meep.
Okay, I see. You're the sound effects guy from all those
Police
Academy movies. Now, that could protect the camera body because the camera body has electronics and intelligence.
Yeah,
How
what
do you
about the
protect
lenses?
Okay. The lenses, I think now most of them will report their own serial number to the camera. And if not, then they should do that. Some sort of unique identifier. The camera, every time you connect a lens, it could just record these, keep a little list of the lenses that it's talked to, and then whenever it's connected to the internet, connect to Wi-Fi, they should all be connecting to the internet and phoning home just to check for firmware updates on a regular basis, right? Because lenses get firmware updates, cameras get firmware updates. When it does that, go ahead and send the serial numbers. And if something has been stolen, then the camera could notify you that that lens was reported stolen. I'm not even suggesting it locks it out. Just tell you, hey, this serial number was reported stolen.
You know what would be really cool?
What's that?
Imagine if it could detect it if you attach a stolen lens and then there's like aperture like blades in the lens that close down on the front and it says like stolen lens. Right? So you just have to look at it and look at the front and it's just like stolen. It locks down.
I am really just trying to take baby steps here because people get so concerned when you suggest adding some sort of tech to a camera. Like, I understand. They don't want to be in the field and have it shut itself down because it's been falsely reported stolen. I'm not even suggesting anything shut down. Just tell the person that it was reported stolen. You know why? Because
I want to shut it down.
if somebody buys a lens from a pawn shop
Yeah.
and they connect it to their camera and it says this lens was reported stolen, they're going to go back to the pawn shop, and the pawn shop's not going to buy any more gear from that person. And again, it doesn't stop that theft, but it prevents future thefts by making it less profitable, by allowing the pawn shop guy then contact the police, who can look at his cameras and perhaps trace that thief down. All of this just adds up by making it more and more difficult.
Make it difficult for these camera thieves.
But what about my privacy? People are always like, I don't know who these people are who are complaining we're violating their privacy by reporting a serial number and just in a read-only way.
I don't know who they are
whether it's stolen.
either. Did you just make them up?
No, because every time I bring something like this up, I get a bunch of angry people. And keep in mind, they're making YouTube comments, which means they have a Google account. They probably have a smartphone, which is tracking them 24/7. And I bet they're on Facebook. Like, I'm of the mindset, I don't have any privacy anymore. I've given up this fight. But I do understand that there are people out there who don't want any of this in there. And that's why I suggest when you first turn your camera on, it just says, enter a PIN or skip. And then people can just choose skip and their camera won't have this. But as long as it is on by default, it will have the effect of discouraging thieves from stealing any camera. And that is going to reduce theft and make us all quite a bit safer.
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't be breaking into these camera stores if they knew as soon as they stole the camera, the whole camera was going to be shut down. Who's going to scrap a camera for parts?
Yeah. And so many people are going to say, but this doesn't stop theft. After all, you could still grab somebody's camera and run off with it. But that's what the point I'm trying to make. Long term, it reduces the overall number of burglaries by reducing the profitability.
They'll just go into the next easier thing to steal. It's like how they say having a dog and a home security sign really just makes the thief move on to the next easier target. That's what it could be for cameras. Let's make them move on to something else. Stop stealing our cameras. Stop smashing into lens rental places. Make them try a little harder.
But what's it going to take? Why has not a single camera manufacturer implemented optional pin protection? As a former developer, I know this would be such an easy thing to add to cameras.
I don't know, maybe their software isn't complicated enough. You know more about this than me, but would it be easily hacked anyway? Maybe they've tried it and they're like, oh, it's not enough. It's not secure enough.
Not that many cameras nowadays have hacked firmware. Like the old Canons were hacked, but the most recent ones really haven't been. I mean, it's a good question. Maybe it is something they'd have to go through, but...
Let's ask them. Why do you think they haven't done this already? Is this something that you would want? And do you have any other ideas? Do you think that they should just deter theft, like Tony said? Or do you think we should lock them down, like I said? I'm more severe. Lock them down.
Or do you just want more and more megapixels all the time and not pay any regard to the millions of dollars of gear that is constantly stolen?
Tony, let's take a moment to thank Squarespace. You do it this time. I like when you do it.
Okay. I use Squarespace for like 4 or 5 websites now. It's just really easy to go set up a quick website for whatever. You get yourself a custom domain. You can accept custom emails through it, drag and drop. You make it look totally pro. And you have a professional web presence that is so much better than just relying on social media. If you want to check that out, just totally free. Not pushing anything on you.
No credit card.
Go to squarespace.com/Tony.
We're not pushing anything. This is our livelihood.
Pick one of their gorgeous templates that matches your style, customize the colors, drag the pictures in, write your own copy, and if you love it, use the coupon code TONY to get 10% off when you decide to sign up.
Sounds good. This is the Picture This Photography Podcast. Subscribe if you'd like to see more podcasts. Write a review if you want to help us out in a totally free, cool way. I read all the reviews. It's very fun for me. So leave me one.
Oh boy, this seems like a bad idea.
Why?
Because people are going to say crazy things to you now that they know they got your attention.
Really? Because every other podcast I listen to does the same thing.
Okay, hopefully it's okay.
If
you're watching this on YouTube, you should look up Picture This Photography Podcast on your favorite podcasting app and then listen to it while you're driving or working out or editing photos or something.
I listen to my podcast while I blow dry my hair. Is that relatable to our 99.9% male audience?
Why do you think men can't blow dry their hair, Chelsea? That's really sexist. I'm sick of this. Okay.
Okay, bye.
Good night, bye.